Moving day is supposed to feel chaotic in a hopeful way. Boxes everywhere. Dust in the air. The quiet excitement of seeing your furniture in rooms that still smell like fresh paint. I remember standing in the front hallway with a box of kitchen utensils in my arms, feeling the strange mix of exhaustion and pride that comes from finishing something difficult. Buying the house had taken years of saving and planning. For most of that time it had been my project more than ours. My husband Daniel had always said he trusted my judgment, which, at the time, I thought was a compliment. By noon half the living room was stacked with boxes. Daniel had disappeared somewhere in the house while I made another trip to the car. When I came back inside, I noticed the basement door slightly open. At first I just assumed he had gone down to check the water heater or the storage space. But as I walked past, I heard his voice drifting up the stairs. He sounded cheerful. Not the polite voice he used with coworkers. Not the distracted voice he often used with me lately. Relaxed, warm. I paused without meaning to. There was a short laugh. Then I heard him say, "No, she doesn't suspect anything." For a moment I thought maybe I misunderstood. I stepped quietly closer to the door. "Once things settle here, it'll be easier," he continued, his voice low but clear in the empty house. The person on the other end of the call must have said something funny, because he laughed again. A soft, familiar laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. I stood there for about 10 seconds. Not longer. Just long enough for the shape of the truth to settle into place. Then I turned around and walked back to the kitchen. The strange thing was how calm I felt. Not calm because nothing was wrong. Calm because suddenly many small, confusing pieces from the past year arranged themselves into a neat, unpleasant picture. Late work calls that happened outside. Weekends when he seemed distracted. A phone that always faced downward on the table. Upstairs, sunlight spilled through the dining room windows. Dust floated lazily in the air. I set the box down and opened one of the cabinets. For a few minutes I unpacked utensils, forks, spoons, a whisk. My mind wasn't racing. It was organizing. At some point Daniel came upstairs. He walked into the kitchen and kissed my cheek lightly as he passed. "Basement looks good," he said. I nodded. Great. He didn't notice anything unusual about my tone. Around 2 in the afternoon, while Daniel assembled a bookshelf in the living room, I stepped outside onto the front porch with my phone. I started making calls. First my parents, then my sister, then Daniel's brother, 2 cousins, and an aunt who lived nearby. My voice was cheerful. "We just moved in today," I said. "You should come by tonight. Nothing fancy. Just a little housewarming." Most people were happy to come. A few sounded surprised by the short notice, but nobody refused. By early evening, the house had begun to fill with people. Shoes piled near the door. Voices echoed through the living room. Someone opened a bottle of wine. Daniel looked confused at first. I didn't know we were doing a party. He whispered to me while carrying plates into the kitchen. I smiled. Spontaneous. He shrugged. Slightly uncomfortable but trying to be social. The house felt warm with conversation. My mother walked through the hallway admiring the floors. My cousin inspected the backyard. Daniel's brother opened the fridge like he had lived there his whole life. At one point someone asked how long the house search had taken. That question traveled through the room until everyone was listening. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "A long time," I said. "Almost 3 years." Daniel nodded vaguely beside me, as if the timeline belonged to both of us equally. I continued. "The mortgage process alone took months. Banks ask a lot of questions when one person applies for a house loan." Daniel's head turned slightly. "One person?" his brother asked. I smiled politely. "Yes, I applied alone." There was a small pause in the room. Not dramatic, just enough for people to absorb the detail. I figured it was simpler that way. I added, "Since most of the savings were mine." Daniel shifted his weight. I could see the calculation beginning behind his eyes. Someone asked another question about the paperwork. "Oh," I said lightly. There was quite a bit of paperwork. Ownership structure, insurance, the usual things. Daniel cleared his throat. I thought you trusted my judgment. I reminded him gently. A few people chuckled, assuming it was a joke. Then I continued speaking, still calm. Actually, something funny happened earlier today. The room quieted slightly. I was bringing boxes inside and heard Daniel in the basement. His face went still. He was on the phone, I said. No one interrupted. I wasn't trying to listen, I added. But empty houses echo. My cousin glanced awkwardly at the floor. Daniel's voice came out thin. What are you doing? I tilted my head slightly, just sharing a moving day story. No anger, no raised voice. He sounded really happy down there, I said, talking about how I didn't suspect anything. Silence spread across the room like a slow ripple. Daniel's brother frowned. My mother set her wine glass down. Daniel stared at me. The expression on his face was something between fear and disbelief. You misheard, he said. Maybe I did laugh then. Not loudly. Just a short breath of amusement. Because suddenly the entire situation felt strangely absurd. A brand new house. A room full of relatives. A secret conversation in the basement that had accidentally surfaced on moving day. I probably heard exactly what I needed to hear, I said. No one spoke. After a moment I pushed away from the counter. Well, I added lightly, good thing the house is in my name. Daniel didn't answer. Around us, the housewarming continued in a quieter, more careful way. People moved through the rooms pretending nothing had happened. But the illusion that had existed that morning, the quiet double life, was gone. And standing there in my new kitchen, watching Daniel realize how little control he actually had over the situation, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not triumph. Just the strange, almost ridiculous clarity of a secret that had revealed itself in the basement of a house I had bought myself. And that, more than anything, made me laugh a little.